Hey guys, no matter what property you're owning and operating, whether it's a retail property, an office property, a hotel, or a multifamily, you need to think about how you want to balance your occupancy versus your rental increases. What I mean by that is properties are very different if you're going to be always pushing rent and always trying to increase rents 2, 3, 4%, whatever you can every year, year after year. That's going to be a very different type of property than one where you are always keeping your property at a stable rent, increasing it very slightly, keeping your tenants very happy, and maintaining 100% occupancy at all times. If you're always pushing the rent year after year, it's very likely that you're going to have an occupancy hit on that, meaning you're not going to be able to maintain your occupancy at 100% because some of your tenants are going to get upset that you've increased rent on them and they're going to look to move down the street for a cheaper rent. That's just the nature of the business. But it's actually a decision that you make as an owner operator. There are some owner operators and managers that are very happy maintaining their occupancy at 100%. They don't want to deal with the turnover because that turnover is expensive. Every time a tenant moves out, you have to put a new tenant in there. You have to have advertising and marketing. You have to have somebody sell that unit to them. Somebody's going to probably walk them into the unit, explain the unit and the benefits of living or working on this property. You're going to have a manager or a sales team that can do that. Some managers don't want to bother with that. I mean, obviously you have to every once in a while, but in general, they're going to do their best to keep their property 100% full. Are they going to increase rents? Yes, but they're going to try to keep their rents at or slightly even below other competitive property, what we might call the market rent, in order that their tenants don't really have an incentive to move out. Contrast that with a manager who wants to push their rents, wants to always be pushing the envelope and increasing their rents to try to generate much more income on their property. Going to be a very different type of property. It's going to be a very different type of management because that unit or that property is very likely going to have more turnover. They're not going to be 100% occupied. They're going to have 95 or 90 or 85% occupancy, which means every month a handful of tenants might be moving out. Every month they have to have a marketing and advertising engine that's generating new leads. They have to have a team that's following up on those leads and selling that property and going through that entire, what we might call, I would call it an onboarding process, but a move-in process, right? So that's expensive. It's not just expensive in the fact that you have to hire the staff, which is probably what you're thinking about, and the marketing and what I would call the actual fixed expenses to that. It's expensive because every day that unit is not occupied, it's costing you money. There's an opportunity cost to having not a down unit, but a vacant unit. Whether that's 1 month, 2 month, or 3 month, is going to depend on how many tenants are in the market and the dynamics of that particular location where you're at and the skills of your particular team at getting that unit rented up. So there are a couple of different costs in there. And a good property manager knows how to calculate these and show you these numbers. And you yourself need to understand how to run those numbers. And we can show you, if you message me in the comments, I'll, reach out to you and we can talk about how I can show you how to go ahead and kind of understand those numbers and calculate those numbers and find that balance for you. But really, it's going to come down to your own unique business plan and strategy for that particular asset that you're looking at. And different managers and different owners and operators are going to have different business plans for their different strategies. Just think about it. If you are buying the property and it's expensive, meaning relative to the income and the cap rate, this property is expensive. You really need to be a top manager to make sure that you're going to be able to pay the mortgage and deliver the promised returns to your investors. If you've promised your equity LP investors an 18% return, how are you going to get that for them? Most likely, you're either cutting expenses or raising rent, right? There's no magic to it. It's one or the other, a combination of the both, hopefully. That's how you're going to get those significant returns. Well, in order to push the rent and increase the rent, you're going to end up with some unhappy tenants. You come in here, the property's been running. I mean, let's say you bought a property. So you bought this property, it's been 100% occupied for the last 5 years. It's been family owned and run and managed by this owner who's very happy keeping it 100% full. You come in and you say, well, shoot, in order to justify the price that I paid for this property, I need to raise the rents. So these tenants who have been there for years and been very happy, you're coming across and you're not increasing their rent 1.5% or 2% next year. You're going to increase the rent 5%. Why? Because you looked at the market area and you said, my gosh, all of my competitive properties to this property, very similar in age, very similar in condition and style and amenities, very similar properties, their rents 10% higher. So I'm going to stay below that 10%. I'm going to raise my rents just 5%. Well, that's still a significant amount to somebody who's been getting a rent increase of only 1 or 2% every year. 5% might be too much, but it might not be too much. You might say, you know what, I'm okay with my tenants moving out because I'm going to find new tenants and I'm going to get much more rent for that. Great. That's a business plan. That's a strategy that you have. Just be aware there's an economic cost to that. So just a quick example how, your decisions of how you want to manage that property are going to impact the economics of the property. It's going to impact the kind of staff that you had, the skills that you have in your property manager. You might have to hire an outside marketing or a social marketing group that can help you put together maybe a website or your marketing, your advertising, and your social media. You might have to have all of that engine running in order to go ahead and buy property. By the way, that opens up an interesting opportunity. If you already have skills as a marketer, or if you already know somebody who's a great marketer, that gives you a competitive advantage because now you think to yourself, you know what, I'm very confident that my marketing skills are going to generate leads for this property over and over again. I'm going to push my rent, maximize my revenues because I know I've got great marketing. So it all depends on your unique situation, but you need to really think through what that strategy should be. And that's why I always say, when we talk about this at the Be Your Own Mogul program, that, before you just jump in and run and buy property, and listen, anybody with a big enough checkbook can buy any property they want. Think that again. It's not hard to buy property if you have a big enough piggy bank. It's hard to make money from the property that you want to buy. And for that, you're going to need the right business, the right strategy, and the right executable plan to be able to implement that at that property. Thank you.